What's going on, people? Welcome to the Back of the Nest live Palace show. More importantly, live Palace news show, and news is what we have. Obviously, I'm joined here with Louis. How are you doing, bro?
I'm all good, man. I'm all good. First signing through the door, so we're here. A bit later
Let's
than
go.
usual,
Let's
but
go.
we're here.
Let's go. Now, obviously, the main talking point today is obviously going to be Mr. Romain Esse from our friends and neighbours down the road, Millwall, which I'm sure they're going to be happy and delighted with. Now, Nixon, Mr. Alan Nixon, a journalist who's obviously very familiar with Palace news and Palace go-arounds, is reporting, and the Daily Mail is reporting that Esse is basically on the cusp of completing the deal to Crystal Palace for £14.5 million. It is reported that it's near completion, so very similar to what Louis is feeling. I'm happy that it's done and it's through the door, or it's about to be done and get through the door. I think it's a case of we're looking to get these deals done quickly. The manager wants them through the door. And an interesting factor to it is we're not actually going to be loaning him back. He's actually going to be pushed into the first team squad and first team whereabouts straight away. So I'm really, really happy about the news. He's a really good player. I think he's really, really exciting. I think he's very raw, and I think he can progress and move on to the next stages, very similar to the likes of your Eze's and Elise's, which we've historically done as a football club. Louis, what are your thoughts on the deal?
Yeah, I'm proper happy. I see people knowing I got the bingo right, 10th of January, yeah? He's not holding up the shirt, but I read Alan Nixon's Patreon says Crystal Palace will keep Romain Esse after his £14.5 million signing. Eagles sweep for the wide man Esse ahead of schedule and will include him in their squad immediately. Lions hope they might get Esse back for the rest of the season, but he will stay with the Premier League side instead. So I'm gonna are we gonna chat? Are you gonna give me the bingo? Did I get it right?
Leave a like down below for Louis, the predictions master.
Do I get it?
I feel like technicality. Technically, listen, it's still the 10th today, so I ain't taking nothing away from you. And for me, I think it's very important to get these players through the door as soon as. I think it's nice to get them kind of done early in the window. I think I am beyond the realms of fed up of waiting, and then eventually he turns up, he comes through the door, and he moves on. I think the way I see it is it's a case of looking at what he's going to bring to the first team. What kind of player are we kind of looking at here? Because there are a lot of people that aren't aware of who he is. There aren't a lot of players that know what he potentially can bring to the first team. But a player that is very, very exciting and attacking, left foot, can play attacking midfield. I've seen him play on the wing as well. I know he can hold the number 10 position very, very well as well. I've actually seen him hit a couple goals with his right foot as well, so he's not shy to kind of do something a little bit unorthodox as well. I know for a fact he is probably Millwall's most creative and exciting player out of the lot as it currently stands. So what are you saying, Louis? What do you reckon he's going to bring to the team? Or more importantly, do you think he'll be in a position where he can bring anything to the team now? Or do we reckon it'll be a thing where we might have to potentially wait a period of time before we start seeing what he can bring to the first team?
I think one of the main things is he'll definitely be in the squad. That's one thing. I wouldn't want fans to expect him to be coming on maybe 35, 40 minutes straight away, because Glasner has a very specific way of playing. So he has to learn that. And he's always speaking about players like when Sarr came in, he didn't learn straight away, did it? It took him a bit of time to get into it. He'll have to see how fit he is, because playing for Millwall and playing in the Premier League is two different things. But where Sarr's really on form, and we've got Eze as well, Kamada, hopefully Franca in the next 4 weeks, it'll give him a chance to come on and build his confidence. And definitely he'll get space in the last 20, 30 minutes. So he's definitely a talent. If he can use his ability that we've seen in the Championship, we could be onto a gem. But I think it's very important the Palace fan base don't expect Elise type output when he comes.
No, I think that's really, really important, to be fair. And I think it kind of flashes back to when Elise started sort of with us as well under the Vieira season. I remember being there, and he did look almost like he had to kind of warm himself into the starting 11, to be fair. I remember seeing a few games, and I remember a good friend of mine who sits next to me at games, and I sort of remember in the first couple of games, I was like, he's a bit quiet. He's not really getting himself into the game. He needs a bit of time. And obviously, look how that one played out. So I'm going to go on record to say I kind of expect something quite similar. I mean, if he did rip the Premier League apart and we got a Wharton 2.0, even better. But I think part of that also is it kind of gives those players who are kind of breading themselves back into the team a little bit more time. Granted, he doesn't play in the same position as Wharton, and he's not a carbon copy of a Francer, but I certainly feel that he is one of them players where he's in a position where he can kind of take the ease off these players, to be fair. Obviously, it's a number for the door as well. I feel like there's definitely still more business to be done, which we'll get onto in a second. But I feel that, I don't know if you particularly agree on that one, Louis, but I just feel like it's going to just be a really good opportunity to maybe even give Kamada a bit of time to potentially break into the team as well. And it could potentially, at least down the line in the next couple of weeks or months, kind of fill that position that Eze needs support in the other attacking role in the team.
Yeah. I also think it was important that we got a player who could, he wasn't just a right number 10. He's flexible. He can probably play wide right. He can probably play wide left. I think one of the main things at the end of last season when Eze and Elise were on such form, sometimes they'd just be all over the place. They weren't stuck in one position. Did you remember that Villa game when you get Elise crossing across the box for Mateta and Eze was popping up on the right, and we haven't had that profile of player to be able to play that sort of way. It's been quite direct. We've been going like a bit longer to Munoz and Sarr and trying to get in behind over the top. So it gives us a whole different dynamic. I just hope he has the confidence to just integrate into the squad quickly. But going by our squad and being in South London, no doubt he'll feel welcome.
Exactly. And I think the other partial key thing here is the fact that he's going to be in a very similar area to where, I mean, to be the reality situation is he doesn't even have to move from where he is now. He is from South London. As far as I understand, in terms of his lifestyle, he resides in the South London area. I know he's a little bit more southeast based in terms of the kind of Bermondsey area. But he could stay well within that area and still be able to, come to training perfectly fine. Obviously, match days and stuff like that. I know that's a different animal, but he doesn't have to up sticks, move his family halfway across the country or even halfway across the planet as well. I feel like it's a really good potential position that we're in right now. Now, maybe me thinking a little bit forward and me being a little bit greedy, if we can get this wrapped up in the next few days, hopefully before Monday, what's next for us? I'm assuming it's going to be the left back situation. That's the most common one that we're aware of. And I know Glasner's mentioned these once too. So for you, what's next or who's next?
Well, it's obviously the left wing back position. We was all a bit worried because it's gone quiet on Juff, and then the news came out that Spurs have bought their keeper, so there was cash flush, and then now all of a sudden Norwich have spent another 7 million on one of their players. So I don't know. That's gone quite quiet, but obviously there was a few rumours today about us being in for Best there. But he's also got admirers. Was it who was part of them? There was quite a few bigger clubs, weren't there? Was it RB Leipzig?
Yeah, so the article that I sent in the chat earlier on today was, you're right, Dortmund was mentioned. He's currently obviously at Benfica, and then there was another club, I think it was one of the ones in France, to be fair, that are interested in as well. But I'm going to be honest, I anticipate a Doogie masterclass, so whether it be Bestie or Juve. Obviously, the Slava Prague thing you mentioned, obviously they've sold another first-team player today, so they, at that level, are absolutely packed with copious amounts of cash for the kind of financial background they've got. So they're set, at least for the next sort of summer, January, and maybe the summer after that. So they're going to naturally play hardball in terms of maybe pricing us out of move. I don't believe there's a buyback clause in it. So either Parish has to sort of go deep in his pockets and pull his finger out a little bit, or we may have to potentially maybe up the offer in terms of what Bestie's got going on as well. It'll just be a case of just figuring out which deal is best. I mean,
they quoted 12 million euros, didn't they? That's double what they paid Heidenheim.
Which, in all fairness, is not the be-all and end-all. That's not a lot of money for us. I mean, if you think about, it's going to be very similar to what we did last January, to be fair, because what did we pay? 25 million for Wharton, and then 8 million for Munoz.
Yeah.
So I would go on record to say that in the end of that, that's actually going to work out cheaper than what we spent last January. And for the sake of another, what, £1 or £2 million, if it means we're going to keep Glasner happily and, you know, re-aim for hitting our targets for what he wants to achieve, for me, we got to spend the money.
Yeah. With Juf as well, Slavia Prague are on a winter break and they're not back to the 23rd of January. So the thing with that is there's no player to be like, I ain't playing, I ain't training. No one's doing anything. They're not in. Slavia Prague aren't in any rush. So if anything, they would probably rather string it out towards the end of the window. And we've got like 3 or 4 games coming up. So we can't be held ransom by Slavia Prague. Like, it's not it.
I think Parish needs to let his nuts hang a little bit on this one, to be fair, because I think exactly the same with what you said. I 100% agree. It's one of them ones where we kind of want the deal to just be done, get out the way, and we can just get on with our side. Because let's be honest, if we got those 2 players in the next week, who's complaining? Obviously, you can always moan and complain about potentially, there's one more player to get. But then I don't even debate on that side of things that you've got a potential opportunity there to go and get that third player if the deal pops up down the line in the window, because we know what transfer windows can be like.
Yeah.
There might be a player that's obviously priced out of a move, or it could be a situation where all of a sudden there is a player that has now made himself available because he wants to move to potentially a bigger club, or he may not be happy where he is, you know?
Yeah.
So if there's an opportunity there for us to just get these 2 players out the way and then see if there's any other additional bonuses, I want to see a Doogie Freeman masterclass. I feel like there's an opportunity there. Before I move on to the next sort of subjects, guys, obviously, please make sure to leave your comments as well. Obviously, how are we feeling about this deal? Is Louis Crystal Palace missed this Meg? And more importantly, any sort of likes would be appreciated as well. Now, in terms of other Palace news that we've got going on as well, we've had 2 of our youngsters go out on loan. So we've had Agbenone, bless him, I've struggled to pronounce his name. He's signed with Gillingham to the rest of the season. And Omolu has ended up signing for Port Vale. So 2 really exciting youngsters that we got in our academy. I feel like Asher was definitely a lot more closer to the first team. He's obviously made his first team appearance. He's been on the bench several times, but we haven't really sort of seen him since, which has been a little bit underwhelming. But the thing is, obviously, when you are looking at clips of the under-21s and what he could potentially do in them scenarios, and then potentially bringing it up to the next level, i.e. Premier League, FA Cup, these types of things, there's always going to be a natural differential between the 2.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I mentioned in the group, which kind of, thanks for that, made me look a bit silly, is obviously on the training clips, which we always bring out, I was obviously mentioning that he was a lot of him showing. So I'm a little bit gutted because obviously I'm sitting there thinking, he's going to get a start in the cup and all the rest of it. And then less than 24 hours later, he signed for Gillingham. Omolu, I know he's definitely got a lot of talent, but I don't know how much closer to the first team he actually physically was. But Port Vale's a decent level for him to potentially go on loan to as well. So I'm not against it. I'm not unhappy with it. I think if we're definitely bringing players through the door now, maybe that is freeing up the space to be able to get these other players out the door and let them get some real first team experience at the lower level. But Louis, what's your thoughts on, I guess, both of those loans, and what do you reckon is going to play out for them?
Well, Agbenone is a talent. He's still a bit raw. So, funny enough, he's the same age as Esse, which is it's telling because obviously Esse is 19, so we've got to give him time as well. If you compare the 2, that they're the same age. Agbenone ripped Gillingham apart. Obviously, it probably wasn't their best first team, but when they played in the I don't know what they call it now, but the Johnson's Paint Trophy, you know, with the under-21 teams play against League One, League Two teams. He ripped them to shreds. I'm very happy he's with my old friend Johnny Williams there. So hopefully they can do a link up there. Port Vale were top of the league for a lot of the season. Darren Moore's the manager there. So hopefully he'll get a lot of love up there. They're in the playoff hunt. So it's a great loan, to be fair. And Port Vale, I don't know how well supported they are, but they got a nice big stadium. It's better than playing under 21 football, that's for sure. So, and obviously, remember when we was talking about the training video, and I was like, feels like there's hardly any players there. Then Glasner in his press conference, we'll talk about his presser now as well. He said everyone's been ill. No wonder they was doing 5-a-side.
Illness breakout in the team, man. Oh, yeah, I did see that news, and that one kind of made me go. I mean, it's quite fitting and quite convenient that it is obviously a cup tie against Stockport, so it's not even a case of picking a potential air quote weaker team. From the sounds of it, I don't think we've got much choice. Yeah. But then at the end of the day, it's quite good because he hasn't put himself in a position where he's cup tied a lot of those youngsters, so they can actually go ahead and get their loans. I think the only air quote concern I've got with Asher is that I just hope he turns out to be the next air quote Wilfred Zaha rather than the next Brandon Pierrick, because I feel like we definitely had that version. Obviously, the type of manager that we had at the time when he broke into the team wasn't really built for him, but it just felt like, you know, I don't want to see this kid playing for AFC Croydon in the next 4 years. You know what I mean? I really want to hope he comes on leaps and bounds and he really expresses himself and showcases, and more importantly, comes back as a better player as a result of it.
Yeah. I really hope it goes well for him. I think the biggest thing when these kids get these loans is they get the minutes and they don't just sit on the bench like Malcolm Eboué. Who else has gone? Edouard is obviously he's a bit older, but there's been a few loans. Danny Imre's done really well. That maybe that League One level is maybe a bit too high. You got to really prove yourself in League Two, and if you shine in there, then all of a sudden, like there was reports that Imre was going to Wickham. I don't know what's going on with that. They might have convinced him to stay at Bromley because he was doing so well, but it'll be a great learning curve there. Obviously, I can't remember how to pronounce it. He's going quite far up to Port Vale. Agbenoni probably doesn't have to move anywhere because Gillingham's not too far.
Gillingham, Kent-ish.
Yeah, if he's driving, or he could just jump on a Thames link down the road.
All right, let me put this out there. Never jump on a Thames link. That is not I'm just putting it out there. Don't do it. So take it from a Southeast Londoner. Don't do it. But in all fairness, I noticed there that you sort of named Johnny Williams in there. So if anybody's wondering how Louis getting all these predictions right, he's probably got a few inside men. Clearly, there's been a lot of accusations in terms of who's got the inside people, but Louis definitely leading the race in that one for me. I'm watching it. But in all fairness, going into this cup game, it would be really ideal if we could get these players in the line, because I think the most important thing is that I want to avoid the cup tie, and I feel like Millwall might do us a little bit dirty there, to be kind of get a last minute sort of slap out of the deal as well. Before we sort of tune out, was there anything you wanted to bring up before we move on to any potential questions? Because if you guys do have any questions for me or Louis, please obviously put a queue down into the comments and we can potentially have a few of them, because obviously we can see your comments and stuff like that. But if you do have any actual questions,
I'll quickly go through Glasner's press conference. These quotes are from Bobby Manzi. Obviously, there's broadcast rules, so what we can see at 1:30 is normally about 7 minutes long, and it's only normally like one journalist. I think maybe Sky Sports are the only ones allowed to speak to Glasner. Then they'll say this is the end of the broadcast section, and then it's a bit like, do you remember like how they have the 3 p.m. blackouts? It's a bit like that for journalists. So come 10:30, that's when you'll see like South London Press, News Shopper, and you'll see the full quotes of what Glasner has to say. But Bobby Manzi is obviously was in the presser today, and these are his quotes. So Will Hughes is questionable. We have many ill players this week. JP and Corpora didn't train until today. Mitchell and Lacroix didn't train. Henderson went home today ill. Wharton is improving. He's still away while away from training with the team, but he is getting better. It is unlikely to see him in January. No new update. As soon as we sign a player, we'll tell you. We are working on 2 transfers. Esse is one of them. How quickly we'll get them done. There's 1 down, 1 to go. And then lastly, both Matt Turner and Eddie Nketiah will start tomorrow against Stockport. So that's the first broadcast. If you look out for 10:30 p.m., put Bobby Manzi or Edmund Brack, they'll have the full quotes.
And obviously some very, very interesting notes. I mean, Turner and Nketiah starting. I don't hate it, to be fair. I feel like Matt Turner is definitely another one that's probably got a bit of a point to prove, because the way that Arsenal fans have obviously spoken about him historically, he's not always been great. But then he's always been pretty decent for the US, to be fair, which I'm sure Patrick and T would obviously provide to you. So I've got only a couple of questions here. So I've got one from David Maynard, and he says, who would your preferred choice, Bestie or Juve? For me, I like the look of Bestie, and he feels like he's definitely the more finished product. But then Juve is doing really, really well as well. He's got something like 8 goals this season, 8 goals in their season. For an attacking left wing back, that's very, very impressive, to be fair. He's not afraid to get forward. I feel like Juve, you could maybe mold a bit better, whereas Bestie looks like a more finished product. And I think the only potential selfish point of view I'm thinking about is which one is going to be more of a rotational with Mitchell versus who's going to oust Mitchell out of the squad, because we've already got a lot of rumours circulating, even though they're all not correct, because he all seems to think that he's out of contract in the summer. I mean, he's been linked with Barcelona and Atletico and all these kind of random clubs. You never know. Strange things.
Every time I see a link, I think, does he know?
Mitchell's agent's out here, mate. He's probably got the same agent as. He's probably got the same agent as Odin Wengy, mate. Charlie.
No, same agent as Choupo-Moting.
In it. Yeah, we getting them big boy PSG moves, Bayern Munich. Listen, Mitchell's got a lot of talent, but we know what we've got here. Like, let's not play these silly games, to be fair. I've seen too much of that. But in all fairness, I think my concern around it is I'm just worried about his long-term development. I don't want it to be a situation where he's completely ousted out the squad straight away, unless it's one of these situations where that other player is so much better and superior and so much in better form, because we know a manager like Glasner is going to go on form. He's not really interested in rep. So that's my opinion on that part. Louis, what about you?
Yeah, listen, I like Besta. I like the look at him. He can play both sides, so that would be a plus. He could probably fill in on if Munoz got injured, just because he's played on that right inside forward as well. I said he's quite similar style to Ait-Nouri, technically. Unbelievable on set pieces. He's more the finished article. I definitely think he probably adapt to our system quicker. Juff is 19 again. That'll be 2 19-year-olds. So yeah, man. If we're talking best effort 12 million euros, but we have to put 20 million for Juff, I'm probably gonna go Besta. But I trust Dougie. He's the director of football or head of operations recruitment for a reason, and there's a reason why I'm here talking about it on stream. So I trust Dougie.
Right. So I'm going to do one more question, fellas, because and ladies, if you're listening, is because obviously we haven't got much time left as well. So one more from Animal is that I want to see Imre in the squad next season. He's 21 and ripped up in the league last season. Where do you sit with that? Personally, if he comes back and he's able to replicate at least 50% of what he's been putting out in Bromley, I think there's an opportunity for him to potentially sit behind Munoz, because any right wing option you put into that team is going to struggle to oust Munoz from that starting 11, because as far as I'm concerned, he's one of the most consistent players in the first team. The man's got an engine of a Ferrari or a Jaguar. He's just a different animal. So that's how I stand on that one.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation that you have with the player. I'd prefer us to bring in a quality right wing back, one of Munoz's level, and let Imre get a better loan. So, but if he really proves himself and Glasner thinks he's ready, then he has to have that chat with Imre saying, listen, I want you to be my backup right wing back in the Premier League. Sometimes you never know what happens. Munoz gets injured. This guy loves a yellow card. Next thing you know, you've got 8, 9 Premier League. Would you rather 10 Premier League appearances or 20 in League One, 30 in League One? I don't know. It's what you want. I know them bonuses from playing in the Premier League will be sweet.
I know which one I'm with all day, mate. I'd sit on the bench for Munoz. I'm not exactly the best right wing back, but for the kind of money they're looking at all day, mate, I'll take $5,000 a week. Why not?
Definitely.
But more importantly, guys, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Lou. And more importantly, thank you guys for obviously tuning into the chat. Obviously, if you do have any additional comments on there, we do try and interact with our fans as much as possible. So if you're watching this on replay on YouTube, please feel free to put your comments down. More importantly, likes as many possible because it helps us push the channel. And obviously, we're always trying to improve and get better as well. But more importantly, you guys have a great evening. And hopefully by the next time we tune in, we'll be looking at the new player holding up a shirt. Up the Palace, guys.
SA25.